Throughout my entire life, I strive to be a devoted wife and a nurturing mother. But after my ex-husband Gary betrayed our vows, he simply walked away, never once glancing back. It was left solely to me to keep our family intact. I raised our son Andrew all on my own, slowly building his future bit by bit, year after year. When Andrew tied the knot, I emptied every penny I had saved to renovate our old home. My only wish was to give the newlyweds a warm and welcoming place to begin their life together. Yet, never in my wildest imaginings did I expect that on my own birthday, of all days, Andrew would show up at that freshly painted house accompanied by Gary, the man who vanished from our lives more than 20 years ago. Even worse, Andrew insisted that the master bedroom, the best room in the house, should belong to his father. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if it were completely normal. "Mom," he said, acting like the reasonable one, "I know Dad made mistakes, and yes, you went through hard times, but that was so long ago. He wants to come back and be part of our family now. Can't we just let go of the past?" Tears pricked at my eyes before I could hold them back. "Do you really believe a few words can undo the pain he caused me?" I asked, voice trembling. "I'm beyond disappointed in you, Andrew." His expression froze, as if my reaction had blindsided him. "Why do you keep dwelling on what happened so long ago?" He retorted, "It's really not important anymore, I've decided. Dad's moving in." That house, which I had painstakingly remodeled over months into a modest 2-bedroom with a living room barely spacious enough for a dining table, was meant for Andrew and Tessa to enjoy the bright master suite, while I stayed in the smaller bedroom. That plan suited me just fine. I never demanded much, so I asked quietly, "If your dad moves in, where exactly am I supposed to sleep?" Without hesitation, Andrew replied, "With him, naturally. That way it's easier for you to help take care of him." Gary sat there in his wheelchair, tapping his knuckles on the armrest, half humming an old tune, eyes barely open and completely unbothered. And I felt a chill that started deep inside my chest and spread like ice through my veins. "Mom, I realize this is sudden," Andrew said, lowering his gaze as if that softened the blow. "But I really have no other choice. Dad broke his leg and needs support. You're retired and have the time. Honestly, having you both living under one roof was my greatest childhood wish." I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply, fighting the urge to break down. Then I whispered, "Andrew, do you even remember what day it is today?" He froze and shot a sharp look at Tessa as if blaming her somehow. She looked startled, then stepped forward with an apologetic smile. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry I completely forgot." I waved her off, keeping my gaze fixed on my son. "Tessa, it's not your fault," I said gently. "This is meant for the boy I raised for 32 years. Andrew rolled his eyes, frustration tightening his voice. "Mom, work's been overwhelming lately. I just forgot, okay?" On any other day, I might have forgiven him, made excuses, felt sympathy, but not today. Not with Gary sitting there, smug and silent. Not when Andrew could remember to bring back the father who abandoned him for over 2 decades, yet forgot my birthday. I didn't even know when they reconnected. Years ago, Gary drained our savings and ran off with another woman, leaving me alone with a little boy and a pile of bills. Andrew and I fought through those hard years, scraping by on hope and grit until I watched him graduate with his master's degree. Only then did life feel a little kinder. I always felt I owed Andrew something. For the dad he never had, for the childhood I couldn't give him. So I overcompensated in every way I could think of. I'd be at the grocery store before dawn, have lunch ready before he woke up, and personally deliver it to his office in a thermos. When he married, I added Tessa's lunch to my daily rounds as well. Only after making sure they were fed did I throw together something simple for myself. Then I'd run errands for dinner groceries, come home to clean the house, and do laundry with the TV softly humming. My phone was always within reach, ready to start cooking the moment he called. Since retiring, my life revolved around their small household like a full-time maid without pay or breaks. And now, the man who claimed to be too busy with work had the audacity to hand over the home I rebuilt with my savings to the father who abandoned him, and call it his childhood dream. This was the son I raised alone for over 30 years. I looked at Andrew Genetics play strange tricks seeing him now. All those little details I once ignored rushed back. When he was small, Gary would come home drunk and take his anger out on me. Shouting, sometimes striking, I would silently wipe away tears, hide bruises beneath long sleeves, and force a smile so Andrew wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. I truly thought I protected him. But one day, he got in trouble at school for flipping a girl's skirt. When I scolded him at home, he screamed through tears, "You're a bad mom. I'll tell Daddy to come back and hit you." That shattered something inside me years later. Once he was grown, I told him everything his father had done. He stood there stunned, then bowed his head and apologized, saying he was too young to understand before I forgave him. He was just a child. But what about now? $200,000, I repeated, my voice steady, surprising even myself. That money was my life's work, saved from long days standing on my feet, late nights sewing by lamplight, counting every penny. Even when I was sick, I never touched that fund. I put it into renovating this house. I want it back. Andrew frowned and glanced at Gary. "Dad, come on, Mom's upset. Just say sorry and calm her down, okay?" That was enough. Gary, who had feigned deafness, suddenly lit up like a flame. He gripped his cane, rose, spat at me, and snapped, "Evelyn, who the hell do you think you are? This house was given to me by the company. I have every right to live here." I stared him down, my voice cold and flat. "That house was assigned to us the year we got married. All I want is the $200,000 I invested in the renovation." That shook him for a moment, but then he slipped back into his old routine. "You're really making a fuss over some damn money? Spending on your son is your job." "That was my money," I shot back. He sneered. "Or do you plan to run off and spend it on some new man?" I flexed my wrist. Over the years, I took on every grueling, dirty job just to keep this family afloat. I've gained some weight since then, and am no longer the woman he could knock down with a single slap. I didn't say a word. I stepped forward and slapped him hard. He staggered and fell, yelping in pain. "Dad, are you okay?" Andrew rushed to his side, panic in his voice as he turned to me. "Mom, what the hell? You didn't have to hit him. Couldn't we just talk like normal people?" I looked down at Gary with icy eyes. "Say one more word, and slapping you will be the least of your problems." He muttered under his breath, but I ignored him. I turned to Andrew, holding out my hand. "If you don't have the money now, write me an IOU." They both shouted at once, "Mom, how can you say that?" Gary's face turned beet red as he yelled, "Evelyn, you're out of your damn mind. Andrew, don't worry. I've got money when I die. It's all yours." I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, maybe do us all a favor and give it back to me now. Save the wait." Gary trembled with rage, teeth clenched so tight I feared a tooth might crack. Tessa stepped in nervously, trying to calm things down. "Evelyn, please, we're family here. Everyone's just emotional. We said things we didn't mean." I pulled my arm free, voice icy. "If you really think you belong in this family, count me out. I'm done. I refuse to live in this mess." With that, I opened the door and left. I didn't return to that freshly renovated house, dragging my suitcase behind me. I walked all the way to the main road. The sky was dark, and the wind cut sharply against my face. I pulled out my phone, booked the cheapest shared rental I could find, grabbed the address. Done just like that. Under unfamiliar streetlights, I felt hollow inside. Someone on a corner was handing out flyers for a local hair salon. I reached out and took one. The young man looked surprised that someone like me showed interest. He hesitated for a moment, but handed it over anyway. 10 minutes later, I found myself sitting in a tiny corner salon, gazing blankly into the mirror. The woman looking back at me had streaks of gray threading through her hair, and deep wrinkles etched across her forehead and around her tired eyes. Her reading glasses perched crookedly on her nose, the bridge held together by a strip of clear tape. It was as if her entire life had been pieced together with patches, and now even those were starting to unravel. That earlier argument had felt like a fierce storm, but now only an overwhelming weariness remained. Approaching 60, I asked myself quietly, what exactly am I still fighting for? But then a thought sparked inside me. If I don't stand up for myself now, when will I ever truly live for me? To be honest, I'd wanted to dye my hair for years, but I always talked myself out of it. I convinced myself that money was better spent on fresh seafood for Andrew or a nice new outfit for Tessa. Their happiness had always felt like enough to fill my own cup. But now, why should my joy be measured solely by theirs? Why am I always the last name on my own list? I closed my eyes as the stylist's warm fingers gently massaged my scalp. The rare, simple comfort brought a lump to my throat I never told Andrew, but last month, while he and Tessa were off honeymooning in Hawaii, I returned to my hometown. I visited an old friend I hadn't seen in years. She'd just received a cancer diagnosis before treatment could even start. She was already in critical condition, frail as a dried twig. She lay in that hospital bed, too weak to speak her hands, dry and skeletal, clung to mine with desperate strength. Her eyes, glassy and filled with tears, locked onto mine. She had spent her entire life giving in her youth. She cared for her aging parents and helped raise her siblings. After marriage, she endured icy glares from her in-laws, worked alongside men in a factory all day, then returned home to cook and clean. She became a mother, pouring all her energy into raising her children, and then dived headfirst into caring for her grandchildren. She endured and waited her entire life. She held on to hope, just a sliver of peace at the end. Hoping maybe that when her grandchildren grew up, her husband passed on, and her body still had a bit of strength left, she might finally breathe, maybe have a few years to herself. But she was like a candle burning at both ends, lighting the way for everyone else until nothing remained of her. She didn't want to leave. You could see it in her eyes. How could she? The moment I got the call that she had passed, something ignited inside me that I couldn't extinguish. And today, seeing Gary again, that fire blazed back to life. My phone buzzed repeatedly, but I declined each call. Eventually, I switched it off entirely. "Ma'am," the stylist said softly, "take a look. What do you think?" I opened my eyes and barely recognized the reflection staring back. My hair was jet black, glossy, full of life. Once upon a time, I cared about my appearance. I remembered a day when I wore a floral scarf to work, just a small thing. But Gary mocked me mercilessly. "Trying to dress up? You should look in the mirror before embarrassing yourself," he sneered. What he never mentioned was that I'd just been named Employee of the Year at the factory and earned a bonus. He spent nearly all that money on cigarettes and booze. I fought to keep even a small portion. With it, I bought Andrew a toy. With the leftover, I bought a few yards of cheap patterned fabric and sewed myself a dress. That fabric, that dress, suddenly, memories came rushing back. I had found the old sewing machine discarded next to neighborhood recycling bins, a dusty, half-broken relic buried beneath discarded furniture like worthless junk. It was the only thing my mother ever left me. When I was younger, I used it to sew clothes, curtains, patch quilts. With that worn machine, I pieced together a life for Andrew and me. Clean, decent, independent. Now it lay tossed among bent chairs and rusted metal. The foot pedal was broken off, the thread spool long gone. Its once polished surface was scratched and dulled, as though time itself had carved scars into it. I knelt beside it, gently brushing off the dust like wiping away the dirt from a buried dignity. Then I carefully placed it on a clean tile in the corner and headed upstairs. Before I reached the door, Andrew's voice drifted through the crack. "It's so late." "Why isn't Mom back yet? Dad's about to faint from hunger." Tessa's voice followed, quiet and uncertain. "Maybe we should just order something." Andrew sounded irritated. "It's Dad's first day home. What message would takeout send? He's got health issues. He needs a proper meal." I pushed the door open, my newly dyed black hair cascading over my shoulders. Andrew looked up and froze. "Mom, didn't you always say hair dye was unhealthy?" I nodded. I did. But today I chose to do something just for me. He frowned, as though I'd been caught doing something wrong. "That must have cost a lot," he said, as if I'd stolen from his wallet instead of using my own retirement funds. I smiled faintly. "Not as much as your lobster dinner." He opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. "There's food in the fridge. You can cook it. I'm not staying for dinner." His surprise flickered, and then he forced a laugh. "Mom, come on. Don't be like that. There's still shrimp and beef. We were hoping you'd make your red wine beef stew tonight. You love that dish." I didn't respond. I walked slowly to his glass display case filled with collectible figurines. The shelf shimmered beneath tiny LED lights like a shrine to what truly mattered to him. I bent down, opened the cabinet, and carefully took out one of the figures. Andrew jumped up, nervous. "Mom, please don't touch that, it's a limited edition." I placed the plastic figure gently on the dining table. "Andrew," I said calmly, "when you were little, you asked me what something valuable meant. I told you it's what money can't buy." He remained silent. "That sewing machine downstairs. It was my mother's. After your father left, I leaned on it to survive. I put you through school with it. It kept us afloat." He lowered his head, still silent. "And now you toss it out like trash because it takes up space, while your father's battered suitcase takes over the whole room." I stood there, composed, my voice steady. I didn't look back. "I'm not angry, I just don't feel attached anymore." I went into the bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I'd packed days ago. I was ready to leave. Andrew stood in the living room, torn, trying to stop me. "Mom, you've made your point. Can we just cool off and move on?" I didn't turn around. "Don't call me Mom. You stopped treating me like one a long time ago." Just as I reached for the door, Gary's voice came from the bedroom, thick with his usual sarcasm. "Oh, let her go. She's always the martyr, right? The world owes her everything. We're all terrible people, and she's the poor saint." I paused, stood still for 3 long seconds, then slowly released the suitcase handle. I turned and walked straight into the bedroom, stopping by his bed. I bent down and looked him square in the face. That smugness still curled at the corners of his lips. Calmly, I said, "You've been selfish your entire life, but I won't scream, I won't cry. I refuse to let you humiliate me any longer. Know this. Whatever you need to survive from now on, it won't come from me. And to me, you're nothing but a coward, a worthless, miserable excuse for a man." The grin disappeared from Gary's face. I stood, turned, and walked back to the door. This time, no one stopped me. I found a shared rental on the outskirts of town. It was a bit out of the way, but the rent was affordable, easily covered by my pension. The leasing agent was a young woman in her 20s. She glanced at me once, said nothing, then disappeared into her office. Minutes later, she returned holding a small paper box. "Miss Dawson," she said, "I saw it's your birthday today. Happy birthday." Inside was a small slice of cream cake, fragrant with fresh strawberries. I stood at the door a long moment before finally sitting down. That first bite of sweetness made my eyes sting a little. For the first time all day, I felt like crying. Once settled, I reopened a video app I hadn't used in over 2 years. I've always kept a journal, scribbling thoughts in grocery list margins or on old receipts later. After Andrew gave me one of his old phones, I began recording short videos instead. Images, voices, comments. They all felt more alive than words on paper back then. I was just learning how to film short clips. I'd often record myself cooking, feeding the birds, or tending to my flowers, each clip feeling like a casual chat with a friend miles away. Maybe I got a bit carried away sometimes, losing track of time without realizing it. By the moment I snapped back, Andrew was already home, and dinner was either stone cold or burnt to a crisp. He never complained aloud, but the silence that filled the kitchen was thick, as though the whole room had frozen solid. I knew he was upset, so I uninstalled the app. Yet tonight, I logged back in again. I shared a picture of the meal I'd prepared just for myself, adding a short note. "After a lifetime of living for others, this year I hope to be happier, freer." That night, I made chicken soup with onions and carrots. I simmered a whole chicken for hours with celery, fresh rosemary, and a touch of thyme. The flavor was gentle, comforting, and the instant it touched my lips, the cold of the day seemed to melt away. Andrew had always disliked that taste, said he'd grown tired of it, but I enjoyed it, especially in this quiet new apartment. Sipping alone as dusk settled outside, I glanced upward. The sky shifted from soft pinks to deep purples, like a delicate silk scarf slipping slowly between buildings. The red sun dipped beneath the clouds, casting a final golden streak through the window that scattered onto the floor like dusted gold. I couldn't take my eyes off it. For years, I'd never stopped, always rushing, endlessly working, like a toy wound too tight I'd missed so much, including moments like this. The quiet, gentle beauty unfolding above me. I fixed the sewing machine, cut new fabric, and stitched a fresh tablecloth and curtains. I even placed 2 pots of jasmine on the windowsill, so when the breeze stirred, the apartment smelled like summer. Soon, I met my new neighbor, officially my roommate. Ashley, a lively young woman in her early 20s, bouncing with nervous energy like a little squirrel. That very evening, just as I was about to take a bite of dinner, I heard pacing outside my door, back and forth. Finally, she knocked, cheeks rosy, asking, "What smells so good in there?" Right on cue, her stomach growled. I laughed and ladled her a bowl of soup. She ate slowly and gratefully, and between mouthfuls said, "Miss Dawson, you're amazing, seriously, you're my hero." I chuckled. "It's just an old family recipe, nothing fancy." Not 10 minutes later, she knocked again, carrying a box of fried chicken fresh from delivery. "I ordered way too much," she said. "You have to try it. The sauce is incredible." I took a bite and she practically bounced. "I knew you'd love it. You're so chill. Not like my grandma. She won't even let me say fried chicken. Calls it junk food." From then on, we became friends. Sometimes I made extra and shared it with her. Sometimes she brought snacks or fruit from the store one afternoon. She gave me a tiny jewelry box. "Pretty, right? I saw it and thought of you immediately." She fastened a delicate necklace around my neck, then stood behind me as we both faced the mirror. She smiled and nodded. "See? I told you. You look even better wearing it than I imagined." I touched the pendant, feeling something stir deep inside. That's when I realized kindness comes full circle. Not everyone sucks the life out of you. Some people make you feel like even a simple bowl of soup or a kind smile matters that night. Andrew called, I hate to admit it, but I found myself thinking about him now and then. Every time Ashley praised my cooking with a grin, his face flickered through my mind. Always frowning, always finding fault. Too salty. Too bland. Soup too hot. He'd purse his lips and then go silent. When Ashley helped me pick fabric and said she wanted to learn sewing, I thought of him again back then. Whenever the sewing machine got a bit noisy, he'd shout from the next room, "Mom, can you keep it down? I've had a long day and I'm trying to rest." But he wasn't always like that. When money was tight, he ate plain potatoes and bread without complaint. He wore clothes I'd sewn by hand, never asking for anything else. I remember one year, his school planned a fall field trip. I couldn't find the money for it. His eyes were red, but he smiled and said, "It's okay, Mom. I don't really like trips anyway. I'd rather stay home and read." After he left for college, our talks became scarce. Mostly it was, "Mom, when will you send the allowance?" Or, "I won't come home this holiday. Too many lab assignments." Sometimes he'd text, "It's hot out. Don't skimp on the AC," and I'd replay that message over and over. Then he graduated, got a job, fell in love, married, and things changed. He began telling me what week he wanted steak, which day he wanted cake, that he'd be working late, reminding me not to forget his soup. Nothing really changed. When I picked up his call, I could hear the hint of alcohol in his voice. His words slurred softly, almost sweetly, like he was trying to be kind. "Mom, I've been eating takeout for days. My stomach hurts." My chest tightened, but I kept steady. "If your stomach hurts, see a doctor. I'm not one." Silence. Probably hoping I'd soften, I didn't. "If you don't like takeout, cook something yourself. Or did you call just to complain about your stomach?" His tone turned soft, pleading. "Mom, you know I can't cook. I can't live on frozen pizza and canned soup forever." Then it struck me, he hadn't called to check on me. He'd called because he was hungry. My voice sharpened. Then learn, there are thousands of YouTube tutorials. Watch a few and figure out how to fry an egg. He sensed I wouldn't budge. His tone shifted to frustration. "Mom, I work late every night. I barely have a moment to breathe when I get home. Can't you understand?" "I do," I said calmly. "That's why you can hire a live-in helper or order better food than canned soup. You're in your 30s, Andrew healthy, smart. I don't owe you dinner. I don't owe you care." Saying it aloud brought an odd relief. Maybe he'd always known? Maybe that's why he rushed to bring Gary back, so someone else would orbit around him again. A pause, then his voice turned cold. Mom, you're selfish. I'm your only son. And just because I made a choice you don't like, you stop caring? Do you want to cut me out of your life? I laughed quietly. Look around. What kind of son are you? Your worthless father vanished for more than 20 years. He walks back in, and you roll over like a happy puppy. You welcome him as if he never left, then expect the woman who raised you to care for him too. I hung up without hesitation or guilt. Just a quiet sense of freedom. Andrew used to send me $1,500 a month for groceries. Sometimes he splurged on seafood, and the money didn't cover it, so I made up the difference. Never told him, he never asked now, free from serving him. I took that money and enrolled in the Silver Scholars program at my local community college. Each week I joined classmates, mostly my age, in a cozy classroom to learn choir, photography, and basic video editing. I'll never forget one evening on the balcony, watching the sun set over the city skyline. It hit me hard. All those years I lived with my head down, revolving around the kitchen and family. Never once pausing to gaze up at the sky above, I sacrificed my life for someone else's future I saved for over a decade, so Andrew could have a decent home to bring a wife into. Back then, I never imagined I'd say goodbye for good. That true peace and freedom began the moment I stepped away from that house. Now, I carry a second-hand camera everywhere, through city streets, parks, and harbors, capturing the sharp steeples of red brick churches, bold blooms of zinnias in corner gardens, and afternoon sunlight dancing outside coffee shops. I snap photos of my cooking, the hem of a freshly sewn dress, and the fried chicken and blueberry pie Ashley and I order on weekends. I take my camera to choir rehearsals, recording us singing in the echoing practice hall. We're traveling out of state for a competition this month. Ashley helped me find train tickets and hotels, printed a small itinerary, and even marked quaint towns worth visiting along the way. Most of my choir friends are even older than me, some sporting full heads of white hair, but their energy could easily outshine any teenagers. We trek through national park trails, arms wide open on cliff edges, wind whipping against our faces. We pause by quiet lakes to cup icy water in our hands, watching the sunlight ripple softly across its surface. That grounded, tactile sense of truly being present in the world was something I'd never really known before. And though I came to it late, I don't regret a moment. Regret only wastes time and punishes without changing the past. What I want now, what I'm finally ready to embrace, is taking care of myself, shedding what drains me, and beginning to truly live. The night before our competition, Andrew called again. He sounded like nothing had changed, the same familiar voice, casual, but with a hint of complaint. Mom, what's with women these days? Always wrapped up in their own families. Even after marriage, it's a holiday, right? But today, Tessa ran off to her parents before lunch, didn't stick around to spend any time with me or Dad. Tell me, does that sound normal? Is that how a wife should act? I listened patiently, waiting for where he was heading. He expected me to join in his criticism of Tessa, to back him up like before. Instead, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. Andrew, her parents raised her for more than 20 years. She married you, not sold herself to you. She's your wife, not your father's maid. That's your dad, not hers. His voice dropped, sharp with irritation. Mom, she married me. Doesn't that make Dad her dad too? I only asked her to help with a little laundry, and she refused. What's the big deal? Just some clothes to wash. I cut in, voice steady as ever. Then why don't you do it? Did you lose your hands? Afraid your arms will fall off if you wash your own clothes? Silence. That wasn't the reply he expected. Not from me. Women from my generation were raised steeped in old beliefs, that men should lead and women should serve. I taught him that too. With his father gone, I pushed Andrew to be the man of the house early, handed him control, let him call the shots. But now I see how wrong I was. I sighed and said, if Tessa stays, that's her choice. Whether you can hold a home together, that's your ability. And me? I owe Tessa an apology. I worked so hard to keep our family afloat, I never taught you how to be a good husband. The line was quiet for a long moment. I could hear his breath, shaky and uneven. Just as I reached to hang up, he whispered, "Mom, I really don't think I can do this much longer. Can't you just come back and help me?" I knew Andrew was struggling lately. Not long before, Tessa called me, her voice careful but sincere. "Evelyn, thank you for telling the neighbors it was Andrew who insisted on bringing his father home, and that you only left because you had no other choice. If you hadn't, people would have thought I was the rude one, kicking out my mother-in-law just months into our marriage." She never complained, but in her voice, I heard the strain, walking on eggshells every day in that house. She also told me what happened after I left. At first, Andrew was caught up in the fantasy of Dad finally coming home, as if the empty space in his childhood could be filled. But Gary didn't make it a heartwarming reunion. Just days in, he started criticizing the food, complaining about takeout, demanding Andrew hire someone to cook for him. Andrew thought, sure, Dad was old and had mobility issues. He needed help. So he hired a caregiver. But Gary complained she was too slow, too old, demanded a younger woman. They brought in someone younger, and Gary got worse, barking orders, treating her like a servant, making inappropriate remarks, even trying to touch her. In 2 months, 4 caregivers came and went one after another. Eventually, home care agencies refused their calls. That wasn't the worst part. One day, while Andrew and Tessa were out, Gary broke into their bedroom. He rifled through Andrew's dresser, shaved his armpits with Andrew's razor, sprayed Tessa's perfume around like it was air freshener. He tried on Andrew's suits, wrinkling them badly, and left greasy handprints all over Tessa's favorite white dress. Andrew nearly lost it when he returned. But the second he raised his voice, Gary collapsed into a wailing fit. "I gave everything to this family, and now you won't even let me rest in peace. My own son turned against me. Ever since he married, all he does is take her side. I don't belong here anymore. The walls in their building are thin." Neighbors quickly heard the shouting and started gossiping. Now, whenever Andrew steps outside, whispers follow him. Cold to his mother, unfilial to his father. No one sees the full story, only the drama. He works all day, then comes home to tend to a man who resents him. Not even a year in, and Andrew looks drained, thinner, hollow, haunted. I listened to Tessa's quiet words, not feeling much, not because it didn't hurt, but because I saw it coming. Sometimes it takes true pain to make someone finally let go. Later that week, Andrew called again. After a pause, he said softly, "Mom." I glanced at the garment bag by the door, the one holding my choir outfit for the upcoming performance. My voice was steady. "Andrew, this is the last time I'll say this. You're an adult. No one is obligated to carry your life for you. I'm not your emergency maid, not your live-in housekeeper. You pushed me away time and again, and now you want me back like nothing happened. It's too late." I hung up. No second thoughts, no lingering guilt, only quiet resolve. But I never expected to see him again so soon. It happened right after our choir competition ended. We weren't a seasoned group, just something thrown together for the season. From our first rehearsal to the final performance was barely 2 months. Out of 7 teams, we placed 5th. Not great, not terrible. Everyone seemed satisfied. I was walking home with a small gift for Ashley when I spotted a crowd at our complex entrance. In the center stood Andrew, clutching a microphone, eyes red and raw, visibly emotional. A live stream was set up. Tripod, ring light, phone locked in place, broadcasting everything. "My dad left when I was a kid," he said, voice shaking perfectly for effect. "My mom raised me alone. She worked hard, and I worked hard too. Everything I've achieved, I owe to her." He paused, blinking at the camera. "Now my father's old. All he wants is to come home, be with us. But my mom, she chose to walk away. Mom, all I ever wanted as a boy was a complete family." I stood at the edge of the crowd, outside the circle, listening to his rehearsed sob story. All I felt was deep nausea twisting inside me. The male host, some online personality, turned dramatically toward me, then back to Andrew, voice dripping with fake sympathy. "So your mother never remarried?" Andrew shook his head solemnly, face screaming. "What a heartbreaking woman I have for a mother." The host pounced. "Did you hear that, folks? A mother who raised her son alone for decades, never asking for more, never starting over. And a father who lost his way, but returned in twilight, hoping to rebuild what was broken. This isn't a Hollywood movie, he sighed theatrically. This is real life, real people, real heartbreak. Then Gary made his entrance, slow and deliberate, leaning on Andrew's arm like a man half his age's weight, but twice as pitiful. He shuffled forward like a runway model, clutching a wilted bouquet of supermarket roses, petals curling and fading. His eyes half-lidded, expression a familiar mix of cunning and fake sorrow. The host kept the drama going, stepping center stage to face the live stream. Friends, can you bear to watch a love story like this? Two people circling each other for a lifetime, end in silence and separation? If these were your parents, would you let them miss their second chance at happiness? Cue the soft, overused instrumental swell. Pink heart emojis floated across the screen like digital confetti. The comment count began to climb. I stood just outside the circle, watching my life shrink into a viral clip, cut, polished, filtered through someone else's lens. Stripped of its pain and weight, repackaged as cheap inspiration. They'd sliced my story apart, repurposed it as content to feed strangers in exchange for likes, comments, and hollow tears. And my voice? I wasn't even invited to tell it. Slowly, I stepped forward through the crowd. Whispered murmurs trailed behind me as phones raised to capture the moment. Someone muttered, "That's her." Andrew froze, still clutching the microphone. "Mom," he said. I held out my hand. "Give it to me." He blinked, stunned, clearly not expecting me to speak. After a brief pause, he hesitantly passed the mic over. I adjusted it slightly and met the crowd's gaze. "Yes," I began. "I never remarried. Not because I was waiting for anyone, nor out of sentimentality. It's because I didn't have the luxury, or the right, to think about myself. I was too busy doing laundry, cooking, juggling 2, sometimes 3, jobs, raising a child. I packed every night to the brim just to survive. This man didn't just abandon me. He stole every penny we had and left me with nothing but chaos. I started from nothing, with a little boy at my side. I didn't even know how to mend a shirt, but I learned. I learned to sew, to stitch, to endure. That old sewing machine? It became our lifeline. Every shirt Andrew wore, every meal he ate, was made with my own hands. I glanced at Andrew. Something flickered in his eyes, but he blinked it away. "You say I shouldn't stop my son from welcoming his father home. But where was this man when it mattered? He spent our money in someone else's bed, drinking, gambling, living without care, while I hemmed pants at 3 a.m, just to scrape enough for Andrew's school fees. Think this is a heartwarming reunion? This is soap opera." I raised my head, scanning the crowd. I am not a supporting character. I am not the bitter woman needing forgiveness. I am not a prop in someone else's redemption story. I was the woman who bent over backwards every day, breaking myself to keep everyone else whole. But I'm done. My voice grew firm. I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I'm here to remind you, some pain doesn't fade. It just waits to be acknowledged. The square fell silent. The winter wind rustled the bare branches overhead. The livestream host's fake compassion froze mid-smile. Andrew's face drained of color. I handed the mic back softly. If you want to be a good son, stop using your mother as a character in your sob story. I turned to leave. Gary stood there, limp bouquet in hand, frozen mid-scene, waiting for a moment that would never come. He thought I'd cry, melt, run back into the role he'd cast me in. But I didn't even glance his way. I walked past, into a life that now belonged fully to me. No applause. No one tried to stop me. Only a quiet voice from the crowd whispered, "She's right." It wasn't loud, but it was enough, like a fresh breeze tearing through the facade, blowing it all away. Winter passed, and spring crept in softly. I sewed new tablecloths, swapped balcony flowers. Jasmine was out of season, so I planted petunias, bright and vivid, shimmering like water ripples when the wind stirred. I kept attending community college classes weekly. Some choir friends suggested a summer trip north to a national park. I said without hesitation, I'd be there. Ashley insisted on helping me pick hiking shoes. We spent an afternoon at the mall trying on pairs, but in the end, she bought nothing for herself. Instead, she handed me sleek black sneakers. "You look like a retired travel blogger in these." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my purse. She often helped cook dinner. I taught her how to make onion and carrot chicken soup. She showed me video editing and set up a social media account for me. We filmed cooking, sewing projects, even butterflies fluttering in the garden. To our surprise, views started growing. "Miss Dawson," she giggled one night, "you're a slow burn influencer." I didn't care about numbers. What mattered was this quiet realization. I was finally living my own life. One April Sunday, Andrew showed up. I sat on a courtyard bench, reading an old novel, warm sun on my face as the wind turned the page. I heard footsteps. He stood before me, uneasy, not defensive, not performative, just uncertain. "Mom," he said quietly. I said nothing, closed the book, and nodded toward the seat beside me. He sat. Long silence. Then, as the breeze stirred again, he spoke. "I took Tessa to her parents' house the other day. Her mom packed us some of those cornmeal pancakes she loved as a kid." I nodded, still silent. He glanced at my shoes and smiled faintly. "Those are nice. You look like you—" He stopped, catching himself, head bowed. "When I was little, I thought you were fearless, like you could do anything. But now I get it. You weren't fearless. You just never had time to be afraid." My eyes stung. He paused, then added, "Lately, I've been cooking. Tessa says my tomato and egg noodles are better than yours ever were." He chuckled. "She's just being nice. I know she still prefers how you made them." I smiled, heart softening. Then he mentioned Gary. "Dad's gone," he said. "Not dead. I sent him back to a care facility. He's buried in debt. All those friends he bragged about? Gone. Tessa's perfume he stole? I didn't even know until recently. Caregivers quit fast because of him." He breathed deeply, eyes downcast. I kept defending him, maybe because I didn't want to admit he wasn't the father I imagined. I just wanted a whole family so badly. But I never saw that the only real home I had was the one you built. He looked at me steadily. "Mom, I know this is late, but if you'll let me, I want to get to know you again. Not as my mother, not as someone's wife, just as you." I didn't answer with words. I reached over, gently patted his hand, and whispered, "If you can care for yourself and your wife, that's all I ever needed to hear." A month later, a card arrived, hand-painted from Tessa. Inside, "Thank you for raising him, and for letting go so he could finally turn around and look back." I taped it to the fridge next to Ashley's postcards, the choir schedule, and a photo of me atop a hiking trail. Every time I open the fridge, I see them. They remind me I didn't lose anything. I finally learned to keep something for myself. It wasn't until he began stirring up trouble, demanding things, barking orders like he owned the place, treating the caregivers rudely, then stealing from us and rifling through our bedroom as if it were his own. That reality hit me hard. This wasn't some heartwarming father comes home redemption story. It was a catastrophe, a full-blown disaster I'd invited into our lives. Like a magnifying glass, he illuminated every crack that had already existed in my world, exposing them in harsh, unforgiving light. Tessa and I drifted further apart, yet I kept pretending everything was fine. I refused to admit I'd made a mistake. I didn't want to acknowledge that maybe Mom had seen it all more clearly than I ever did. After she left, I didn't say it aloud, but I was terrified. Afraid people would judge me as heartless. Afraid the neighbors would think Tessa was a bad wife. Most of all, afraid to face a quiet, brutal truth I kept locked inside. Perhaps she left so decisively because I had already failed her completely. Still, I kept up appearances. I played the role of the dutiful son, the forgiving son, the son desperately trying to stitch our family back together. I even orchestrated that awful live stream, the staged sobbing, my practiced support, all in the name of a reunion. I told myself it was all worth it. Until she arrived. She walked through the crowd, took the microphone, and said, "You think this is a story about reunion? It's not. It's about a woman who gave everything she had and then became someone else's emotional plot device." In that moment, I finally saw her. Not the overbearing mother, not the cold-hearted woman, but Evelyn Dawson. The woman who carried an entire household on her shoulders. The woman who went decades without ever being asked what she wanted. She was braver than I was, and far clearer-eyed. Later, I brought Gary to the care facility. Not out of anger, and not because I was running away, but because I understood at last. Just because someone returns doesn't mean they're meant to stay. Tessa never complained to me, but I knew those past months had worn on her. She stopped arguing, and somehow that silence made everything even harder. I offered to accompany her to visit her parents. I watched as they fussed over us, packing snacks for the road, walking us to the door. And in that moment, it struck me. I had never truly tried to understand her, or the life my mother had lived. It wasn't so different. I didn't have some sudden awakening. I didn't change overnight. But I started cooking again, cleaning without being asked, learning to pause for just 30 seconds in arguments to let Tessa finish her sentence. I began calling my mother occasionally, not for favors, but simply to say my stew came out too salty, or to ask how her balcony flowers were doing this week. Sometimes she didn't answer. I understood. It wasn't that she hadn't forgiven me. It was that she no longer needed to look back. She was moving forward, and it was my turn to catch up. One day, my mother told me something I didn't fully grasp at the time. There's no love in this world that survives by default. If you don't nurture it, don't respond to it, it will eventually burn out. I didn't believe her then. Now, I do. I want to rebuild that love, not with grand gestures or hollow apologies, but with presence, with change, with time. Slowly, patiently, until maybe she feels it again. I'll never be as strong as she was. But I can do one thing. I can stop letting her down. And somehow, I think I still have time.